Witch on the Holy Night. Yes, hi. Welcome to Witch on the Holy Night. My name is Maybe Dennis, and this is the next thing I'm going to play. This might be a little bit weird, and oh whoa, it seems like we're hopping right into it. But this was a visual novel I've wanted to play for a long time. You know, you could even say for the past decade. I don't think they ever had an official English translation until earlier or late last year or earlier this year. I got this game in January because it came with the special edition, and that's when it got shipped. But yeah, it was 10 years in the making. I've always been a huge Fate fan, although like the lore gets a little bit complicated, as all Fate fans know. But this was one of the pieces in the Nasuverse I was the most interested in trying out. And now that it's available, I want to give it a shot. This might be kind of weird since I just came off the heels of like several RPGs, but I really enjoyed the visual novel aspect of 13 Sentinels. And I want to, do another one since I really want to play this. My reading might not be the best, but I hope that you'll stay with me throughout this journey. Now let's hop in. It was a winter's day 8 years prior when it happened. That solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. Around it was nothing but inhospitable wilderness. She had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Things like traveling to school or playing outside were more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, with its pure water and bright stars, it was a place rich with memories both frustrating and halcyon. That was only during summer, though. Winters in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning more severe than the last. Her father would drive her to the train station, after waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the iced-over windows to clear. Oh right. There's voice acting in this one. I don't want to repeat everything they say, so this might be kind of weird, but I'll let them read out their line and I'll read the narration. Her father would savor his morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the garden with icy breath until she reached that old sedan. As always, she inserted the key, then started the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. Just as she proudly finished that humble task she'd done so many times before. Whoa! Oh, whoa. Was that a cat? Oh, it sounded like a dying cat. Whoa! A shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that feeble sound was a cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came out and opened the hood of the car. Oh, what? It was in the hood of the car? What? Creaking fan belt. Oh no. A monstrous-looking engine, and something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and her two kittens. Oh no, the engine... The three cats had been huddling for warmth in the engine's compartment. The mother cat was missing its head. One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belt, and surely died instantly. The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, panted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, or rather, a chunk of meat that was its mother with the last bit of life it could muster. Oh my god. I didn't think it would start off like this. Holy crap. Her father lamented their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he had returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. They had slept next to the engine, and awoken to a storm of spinning belts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this was not unheard of. Oh man, that's terrible. Her father's voice seemed distant. She could only make out a small tuft of the kitten's gray fur. The rest of it was caked in the blood of its mother and brother. I can see its skull. Oh my god, oh my god, this is really graphic. Actually, I'll be right back. I don't need to see what rating this is. Alright, I'm back. So this game is rated M. I'm gonna add a warning in front of the video just to make sure that, people don't go into this blindly. But holy crap. Yeah. The fragile life of a speckled kitten. Trembling and possibly blind, it continued to nuzzle against its dead mother's chest. She took the kitten into her arms and ran deep into the mountains to her grandfather's house. Was it because she was overcome with regret? Or was it the shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic. She knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales, but so was her grandfather. She had to find him. He was the only one who could help. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently. This kitten needs our help, she pleaded. Whether it was a simple task or Herculean labor, her grandfather would not say. He simply granted the girl's childish wish, like a machine. Oh, what did he do? Whoa, boo! Got the bass. Oh, it gets so red. Oh. Oh no, the girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hand. Oh no! Why does this game do this? Its fur was cold. The warmth of life had left its body. And the tears she had fought so hard to hold back poured from her eyes. Regret spread through her chest like an endless gray sky. Oh no. Her mind struggled to come to gripes what just occurred. Then, the last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it never happened. The only thing she was sure of was that life, once extinguished, can never return. That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me. Ooh, I don't I don't know what's happening. Indeed. Whatever occurred that day, it was a day of nostalgia and longing. This is a fairy tale of 8 years ago. The day they first met that no magic can ever bring back. Oh, the house is coming into view. And we got like the old film reel effect going. Okay. Are we going to the intro? Arrogant, greedy, and able only to destroy. I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of Little Red Riding Hood. Chapter 1, Strange One. Wow, so I'm gonna see if I can pull up a menu. Okay, that's the backlog. You can move, quick jump. This is, oh, okay, we got the save, settings, and return. So, let's see the settings a little bit and have a moment to breathe. Oh my god. So, this game jumped right into it. We had like a title screen for like maybe like 4 seconds, and then we went right into the story. A quite brutal intro that was as well. Man, I did not expect that. But yeah, this game is completely, I think all the dialogue is voiced in Japanese voices. So I'm not going to repeat the lines like I said before, but it's going to be kind of awkward. I hope that's all right. So we have Aoko Aozaki. I just want to talk a little bit about what I do know about this game, or the lore of it. I know that there are 2 Aozaki siblings that are very important in terms of magic stuff, and they both become very powerful. Don't know too much of the details, but I know that we're going to see her and her sister. And the rest is just like, oh, there's this character in the box cover. That's all I know. Yeah, but I was really excited to play this. I didn't know it would start off so graphic. But yeah. So these are the controls. Confirm, skip, system menu, kind of blah, blah, blah. So I believe this is called a kinetic novel instead of a visual novel, because I don't think you're allowed to make any choices. I think it's essentially just an audiobook. But an audiobook with high production value and some good music. I remember one of the things that really got me into this was I used to be a huge fan of the band or the music group Supercell, and they did the opening for this. I heard the song like a long time ago, and once I heard it again when they released it It was like an insta-buy for me. But let's continue. Chapter 1, Strange One. It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen, watercolor gray. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit, a rather unforgiving temperature for November. Oh, wow. 43... Actually, no, that makes sense. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, pathetically reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. But mornings like today were, for her, a blessing. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, tardiness would be unavoidable, but today, classes were cancelled in commemoration of the school's anniversary. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. Outside the window was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination, but having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. Oh, she's just like me for real. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of no concern to her. She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to let sleep reclaim her. Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, her simple request would be mercifully refused. A faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her chagrin, out of habit, her eyes popped open. Damn those telephone salesmen! The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Answering it meant walking down a 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, that distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. Very relatable. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge. She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. The realization struck her that her housemate did not have the day off from school, was likely in class for a prestigious little hilltop academy. The caller proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder. She left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room. She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate, to say the least, which meant that the winter was the very worst of the uninvited guests. Never more so than on a dreary morning as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by dense forest. Winter always arrived here first, before moving on to nearby towns. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel very unlived. There was no one here at all. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. It coupled with the dreary mornings, it could have passed for a haunted house. I actually don't know what time period this takes place. I assume it was in the 80s or 90s, but there are 2 people living in a mansion? Damn. She counted more than 30 rings since it first began. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. It could be Alice, I don't know. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out onto the gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had a feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale. For whether it be objectively true or merely superstition, it was always from gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set into motion. Oh, we finally have background music. Nice! Oh, cool. Kinoko Nasu, I know you. So far, the art in this game looks pretty good. As expected. So far, the beginning is really slow. You spent like 15 minutes, no, like 10 minutes trying to pick up a phone. And those are some hilly roads. I don't really have too much experience with visual novels. In terms of pure visual novels, I've only ever completed one route of one, which was for Chaos Child, I believe. I tried Fate Stay Night a while back, but it was too slow for me. I didn't have the patience to get through it. So we'll see how this one turns out. Secretly, I was hoping that they played like the song that I remembered from Supercell as the intro, but I guess that'll be saved for a different time in the story. But yeah, I don't really know what to expect because the Nasuverse is very confusing. There are a lot of rules to magic that just don't really make too much sense to me, since it seems like the less it makes sense, the more powerful it is. At least that's how I'm understanding the Nasuverse. But we're seeing like, you know, backgrounds that you'd see in like anime, with the roads like that, the scaffoldings, the hilly roads, usually the suburbs of anime. Haven't ever been to this part of Japan myself, so I have no idea how accurate this is. Oh, look at that background. Unblur, please. Ah, there we go. So that's what this town looks like. I'm assuming the tall building there is an apartment complex, and maybe the one furthest in the background is like a school. She did mention a school on a mountain. Witch on the Holy Night. There's the title drop again. For the longest time, I thought it was Witch of the Holy Night. I don't know what on the Holy Night means. But the game can finally begin. Or visual novel, not really a game. Oh, I can't really read that. I can read school, the last two characters. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Wait, I thought she didn't have to go to school. Sunlight seemed to be playing peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon. The weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house at such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. It's not really winter yet. 40-something is not that bad. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed inside. She didn't encounter any other students along the way, nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The reception desk to the faculty room simply read, "Faculty closed." The school had given all of its students the day off, except those explicitly summoned like her. Oh, okay. A fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. It's like going to school on a Saturday. Actually, no, that might be normal for Japan. Never mind. She opened the door to the faculty room and headed towards the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and a suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered image this mid-20s man presented clashed with the cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet.
Yamashiro-sensei.
Mr. Yamashiro. She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head.
Yeah, ohayo, Aozaki-kun. Youken wa kiiteiru kana?
Oh, look at this guy. I don't know, whenever, this might be bias, or maybe I've seen a lot of anime, but whenever I see a guy who, has glasses, I'm expecting them to be either, like, they're gonna have a moment where they, like, flick their glasses, and it's gonna shine, and usually that's either, like, them being a smartass or them just being evil.
はい。1時間前に自宅で、事前に何の相談もなく。
Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. He always had something interesting to talk about, and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She was of the opinion that teachers should come across as more austere, like an iron fist that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure, not a buddy to joke and pal around with. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd ever been wired to make friendly small talk. Of course, I had to come to school on a day off.
それは先生の気のせいです。今日だけ特別。
The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched this displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood was from having to get up early, and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversarial.
そうならいいんだけどね。彼にはそう辛く当たらないでくれよ。僕らじゃ正直どう扱っていいかわからないところもあるし。
There's a guest? Wait, so were we called because of this guest? I guess.
先生、その件ですけど、私まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
As Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, he finally understood the reason behind her tone, and slowly put out his cigarette.
電話じゃあなんて聞いたの？
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。
Oh.
理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
It's the anime transfer student. Let's go. One of Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. You could see that she was angry, not because she had to be called to school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生、これが笑い話ならそろそろ帰っていいでしょう
Bye
か。
bye.
いや、ごめんごめん。謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。
本当に転入生の問題で。
訳ありというか難しいというか。
So there is a male transfer student, it seems.
彼、宗十郎くんと言うんだけど、ちょっといろいろとずれていてね。僕らが案内してあげるより、同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
Wait, Sojuro. Wait, I need to double check this. Was that the name of like the teacher in Fate Stay Night? No, his name was Soichiro. Never mind. Close, but no cigar. Only he has a cigar. She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be pushing teaching duties on her, but she did wonder exactly how this transfer student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had behavioral problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar? She didn't have the slightest idea what that meant.
ずれてるなんてそう使わない表現だけど。
She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar that she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home.
一つ質問があります。
何？あ、学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、 それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。青崎くんとはクラスは違うけど、きっと仲良くな。
Wait, if he's not in the same class, why are you calling me over?
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし、測ります。そうではなく、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Yeah, why me? Though her tone was still stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something that she was used to. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. To a point. At times, the strength shattered expectations, and on those occasions, they were left with no choice but to treat it like it was a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her as over the past year. Wow, wow.
山城先生。それで、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered.
それはね。別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていて、学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
Oh, we're the student council president.
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ、教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。適任ですからと強く推薦したわけ。
Wow. No, I want to sleep. In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。言ったろ、僕にはともかく彼には笑顔でって。とまあ、納得してくれたならすぐに移動しよう。もう随分待たせてしまっているからね。それと雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. While he did, the rain shower lightened into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best behaved student might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in this cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it, barely. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That trivial detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather, but he liked rain in its own way. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of the soil, and it reminded him of home. It was at times like these he was able to numb the anxiety the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks and thoughts of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. As if having a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of the rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. A strong point of his, or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out in this moment. She, on the other hand, was livid, absolutely livid. The profile of the transfer student had been explained to her on the way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. Damn, wait, I still don't know what time period this is, but I'm assuming it's the 80s or 90s, and that'd still be pretty, like, weird, especially just without any light or anything like that. That meant more than half of the civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him.
なんて絶望的な断絶。戦後どころか戦前の話じゃない。ロビンソンにも程がある。
She had every right to be angry. His village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Although expressways and the Japan Rail, the old national railways, now spanned the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely impossible for mountain villages like his to exist. But she couldn't have imagined how someone born to such circumstance would think or live.
電気がないって、村に行き渡っていないだけで公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになってまず驚いたのが電話だそうだし。
You're saying I could talk to someone when they're not even here? Damn.
電話って便利ですね。なんて真顔で言われてね。そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
Did you know that we can take them with us now? Whoa. And for most of it, we don't even use it to call people. She shot a sidelong glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the naivete of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a bit.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから、電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど、そいつ、学校も知らないんですか？
うん。どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。
Wow, he doesn't know what a school is. Wow, how up in the mountains were you? I guess there wasn't any electricity, so that kind of checks out.
ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。あ、いや、探検隊の話だね。怖いな、青崎くん。冗談だって。そう睨まないでくれ。大丈夫。話してみた感じ、おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ。
Wow, way to speak to a person like that. Come on, I thought you were better than this.
山城先生、その例え、気休めになってませんから。
As she gave her blunt reply, she tried to simulate in her mind what life without electricity would be like, but the thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She could only understand why the teachers had given up. She too wanted to give up and return to her warm bed, but her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Not only did the teachers believe that she was up to the task, but she also believed that she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word, no matter how bad things looked after the fact. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。なんていうか、優しくね。できれば笑顔とか作れないかな。
If I don't like him, I'ma punch him.
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
ああ、そうなんだ。それはよかった。いやー、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
Mr. Yamashiro's. Wait, was it Yamashiro or Yamashiro? I could have swore it was Yamashiro. Mr. Yamashiro's shoulders slumped. Actually, no, we have a guide. Let's see. I think it was settings. Is that a typo? Am I going crazy? No, it was Yamashiro. Yamashiro. Screw it! Mr. Yamashiro's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ。愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び丸の方が向いてるって。
Who's Toby Maru? She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called to the school on day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyways. She also thought that the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them. At the very least, they could have used their brains and organized all this on a normal school day, another complaint she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。
Damn, I already hate him. I don't even know him yet.
間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
I was so busy having such a nice dream. Her pounding headache from a lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. Only 10? Come on. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disturbed her sleep was the enemy. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. The room slowly slid into view. She didn't care for formalities. Just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room. And found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. Before we go on, let's see from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little bit. Back to the boy's perspective. You don't have to do anything. For some, those words are a priceless luxury. For others, they're unbearable torture. For the proactive girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept it. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that made him homesick, though at this very moment, his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal any discontent. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the gray sky. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. And as long as he had the sound of rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting. Wow.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろう。
He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. The mood felt as damp as the air. It was then he heard the heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
よかった。忘れられているかと思った。
He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. Oh, one... Whoops, I thought that was going to continue. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね。ずいぶんとお待たせしちゃって。
The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me here.
って、あれ？里中先生いないんですか？ひどいな。 話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに。
I was here alone for an hour. He left after the first 30 seconds. Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic. And then from behind him... pop, 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 with a tight-lipped expression that made it clear that she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. And thus they met. Wow, they really don't want to show faces. Oh, there we go. That's what he looks like. The wolf boy. Sojiro gulped. The sound of the rain on the window faded into nothingness. That's when he knew. That was how it felt when time stood still. There we go. That's our girl. She blinked quickly a few times, as if taken back. Why was anyone's guess? The boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like. However, she felt something that she couldn't understand. His eyes widened slightly, as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a different matter altogether, so we will never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. That's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の静木宗十郎くん。
Shizuki Sojiro. Okay.
で、こっちの彼女が静木くんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Aozaki Aoko, let's go! His voice and the sound of rain seemed distant. This is how they first met. Such was their start, for better or worse, like the ephemeral beauty of fireworks. Wow. That was a pretty cool intro, actually. It was commonly believed amongst the students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have time to be irritated 24/7. The reality was that she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore seemed angry about something, obvious or not. The idle gossip did, however, lead her to earning the title of one of the school's 7 deadly threats. The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had the feeling that her tendency to feel animosity towards harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. For today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash in the colors of rain. To reduce electricity costs, the school regulations forbid the use of light during the day. Wow, okay. This was a setting the 3 of them found themselves in. Wait, so even on a rainy day where you can, like, it gets super dark, you still can't turn on the light? Damn. Cheap. Her first impression was that his calm demeanor reminded her of a field of wildflowers. In spite of his perfect posture, he seemed subdued and frail. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least, he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. Whoa, he's got bandages on his neck. Does he have some dank backstory? His dark hair was unkempt, and he came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. Wow, that's the only thing she can say about him. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was that the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she was left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, Not this outsider who were the guests here. Oh yeah, she looks angry. But that looks like a default, what was it called? A resting bitch face? Yeah, that's what it is. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation building within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Aoko felt herself raising her natural defenses.
信じられない。
What's with me?
私、今わけもなく怒ってない。
Yeah, she's just really angry. She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged at her like a thorn in her side.
いやーほら青崎くん挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
His Mr. Yamashiro's attempt to relieve the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶。
After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aoko turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the culmination of her emotional state hurtled towards the innocent boy and skewered him.
Yeah, 待たせたね、しずきくん。
Hearing his name, Sojuro came to his senses. Oh man, it's gonna take some time to get used to saying that name. His stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking it up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned it towards the girl beside him.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くん。
Ah, this time it's his perspective.
で、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Sojuro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure, despite the shock at how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed, mistakenly, that this was how people treated each other in the city. The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker, like Mr. Yamashiro. A girl ready to brawl. An earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for example. While he had thought that he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in an inexplicably bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. In fact, her shadow is red. That's how pissed off she is. It was this moment that he realized his failure. It was at this moment he realized that he fucked up. His realization had come far too late. One false move, and this girl, for whom no problem was too large, would be becoming a storm that would rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued. Murder in the school. It was the teacher's fault.
イケてる。二人とも気は合うようだね。それじゃあ、僕はこの辺でいいかな。
He's like, psych, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this. Mr. Yamashiro laughed nervously as he crept towards the door.
僕は職員室にいるから終わったら来るように。いいかい、青崎くん。くれぐれもだぜ。なんていうか、生徒会長としての度量の広さをこの際僕に信じさせてほしいかな。
Mr. Yamashiro left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed state, one in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was a naive boy and a crossed-armed guarded girl. Someone say something, please! The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over their first moves, though ultimately it was only Aoko that had considered the scene that carefully. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him, in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojuro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。それであなた名前は？
Her tone was nothing if not a reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、静木宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
For whatever reason, he came across as happy in his response.
さんはいいわ。柄じゃないから。こっちは静木くんでいい？
いいって何が？
だから呼び方。くん付けでいいかって聞いてるの。何よ？おかしなこと言った？私。
いや、すごく。
The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed himself.
いや、いいんだ。ごく一般的なんだろう。静木くんで頼む。君は青崎でいいんだよな。
よろしく。
She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. While she was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her, and it was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど優しくしてあげる気はないから。時間も惜しいし手早く行くわよ。
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Aoko's blunt rancor was lost on him once again. He's like, damn it, he's too nice. Humans tend to be overly cautious about being ignored, whatever form that takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Aoko did her best to act professional and directed her guest into the hallway. There was no sunlight in the hallway, nor any signs of life. This was more like a prison than a cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Aoko that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんて、ちょっと想像できないけど。
そう、よかったわね。
Aoko rubbed her forehead. This Sojuro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently, all he had heard about the school was that it was a place where a lot of people met to study. High school teachers imparted to students their knowledge in various fields of study while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Aoko imagine that she would have to explain the concept of school itself to someone. Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts whether he could even handle class, but Mr. Yamashiro insisted that things would work out somehow. Sojiro had managed to pass the transfer exam after all, barely.
私には関係ないけど。
Aoko grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She consoled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she'd spend with this boy out of time, or at least, she tried to keep it that way.
青崎、
He asked calmly, trying to get her attention.
何？
こっちも一つ聞いていいかな。
だから何？
俺の気のせいだと思うんだが、君はまるで何かを睨んでいるように見える。やはり今朝は悪いものでも。
His gaze revealed an earnest concern, as if asking her if she'd remember to eat breakfast. Oh my god! Her face just... I thought my game crashed for a second because the music just went like zilch. It was like another hammer to her head. I like that face. It was true that Aoko had been glaring at Sojiro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact. Not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best days, her roommate used to remark,
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ。もう少し多くのことに寛大になるべきね。
Is that Kanahana? I think that is, yeah, I think that's Kanahana. She had been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powder keg. How naive could the boy be that he could not pick up on this?
私をバカにしてるってわけじゃなさそうよね、この場合。
even she found her own attempt to reassure herself unconvincing. It began to draw on Aoko far too late. That compared to her, this laid-back transfer student might as well have been from another planet.
いいわ。言葉にしないとわからないようだから言うけど、まるでじゃなくてズバリそうなの。あなたの気のせいじゃなくて、私は視線で遠回しに感情を表現してたの。いちいち声に出すのも会話にするのも面倒だから。
In response to her words, the Martian clapped his hands together.
なるほど。どうしてそうしたいのかはわからないが、確かにそっちの方が手っ取り早い意思表現だ。
Sojiro accepted her reasoning without argument. Though he still had no idea what kinds of emotions she was trying to express. It was as if he could hear the words but didn't grasp the meanings. Ideas that should have been connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれてるわ、こいつ。
Mr. Yamashira's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy went way beyond naivete. A stranger in the strange land he may be, but it was only civilized to forgive him some jet lag-induced confusion.
じゃ、とりあえずあなたの教室に行くから。
She had regained her composure. Sojiro raised his hand and stopped in his tracks.
あと一つ。
Aoko waited for Sojiro to continue, but the boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, nursing a vague feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問なんだが、なんで君は怒ってるんだ？怒るのが商売とか、そういう家柄の人なのか？
Oh no, he's asking too many questions. Kill him! A long silence. Though she knew it wouldn't change the situation, she remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. He meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check. Don't kill him yet, don't kill him yet.
別にあなたのせいじゃないから気にする必要はないわ。ただ、この一瞬とお昼まで眠っていた場合を計りにかけたら、あまりに利益の違いがあって頭を抱えただけよ。
With that vague answer, she started to walk again, and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Sojiro Shizuki. While what constitutes normal is clearly up for debate, most would undoubtedly refer to him as so. He was a simple and nice boy with a nondescript features. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. Oh! And Sojiro found Aoko to be very businesslike and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements, as they began and ended in an orderly fashion. The way her fingers raised when she pointed at things, the way she made her way across the hallways and classrooms, the way she would occasionally glance back at him to make sure he was keeping pace. Each and every movement was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Aoko showed him to his classroom, Class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than the previous meeting room, but Sojiro was none the wiser as to its function. Aoko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms, as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Sojiro asked so many questions that much time passed before they reached the AV room on the second floor.
まずいな。
Oh dear, oh dear. Sojiro stopped, looking genuinely concerned.
あと20分経つと1時だ。
It's 20 to 1 already.
嘘でしょ？うちの校舎そんな広くないわよ。
The tour had begun around 10, which meant that 3 hours had passed. A tour of the school shouldn't take anywhere near this long.
そうだったわね。行く先々で根掘り葉掘り聞かれちゃ、そりゃ何時間でも経つわ。
Aoko glared at Sojiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well that he would never pick up on it. Is he? To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection.
なんだこいつ。ちゃんとしてるっちゃ。
Oops, I think I broke him. The guy before her was nothing like earlier. In contrast to seeing his once impenetrable veneer when they first met, she had found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily, at least, until her irritation returned in full force.
で、何がまずいの？覚えることが多すぎてパンクしたなんて言わないでね。
Brain too small, can't comprehend.
いや、それもあるけど。
He's like, yeah.
学校のことは別にして、一時になるとまずいんだ。
Sojiro's gaze wandered as if worried about something. If he was worried about the weather, he would have had a hard time seeing it, as there were no windows in this hallway.
へえ、時間を気にするってことは用事があるのね。そう。人の予定を引っかき回しておいて、自分だけ好きなようにやろうって言うんだ。なんだ、顔に似合わずいい人ね、君。
No, he's gonna feel even worse. Oh.
いや、褒めても何も出ないぞ。
Look at his face.
誰も褒めちゃいないわよ。
She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury.
で、それで、一体何の用なの？
He's gonna morb. Sojiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking him.
そこは秘密にしておきたい。
He said with a perfectly straight face.
慣れ始めたつもりだったけど、こいつのこういったテンポに失神しそうになるわ。
Her frustration was natural. Still, she did everything she could to stifle her feelings and fake a smile.
しずきくん？
She took a step forward.
秘密だってば。
Feeling the mood change drastically, Sojiro took a step back. He's like, oh no, she's too close. And another. No matter how many steps back he took, she kept edging towards him. Stop, get away from me. She was smiling, but he thought he could see the blood boiling beneath her skin.
これ、最後の質問にしとくわね。あなた、私をからかって楽しい？
He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point he doubted presenting any evidence to prove this would do too much to erase that forced smile on her face.
わかった。説明する。
Allow me to explain. His arms raised in surrender. She halted her advance and freed her face from that unseemly smile.
実は1時からアルバイトがあるんだ。でもここはそういうの禁止なんだろ？
そうだけど、あ、禁止されてるから秘密にしようと思ったの？バカね。それなら許可さえ下りていれば問題ないわよ。
Dweeb.
知ってる。試験の時に許可はもらってる。
へえ。
Aoko's face lit up as she realized he might not be the piece of work she thought him to be. Yet.
しかし、許可は一つしかもらえなかった。
One of his jobs, okay.
一つって。
Oh,
これ
whoops.
でも2件減らしたんだ。生活費だけで大変なのに、学費まで稼がなくちゃいけない。なのに働き先は一つだけというのはあんまりだと思わないか？
いや、あんまりなのはあなたの方だと思うけど。
He's broke, it can't be helped. Though still irritated, her opinion of him changed a little. She was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses all on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. The words part-time job were about the last thing she could have ever expected to hear out of this country boy's mouth.
そういうことなら仕方ないわね。いいわ、行きなさいよ。事情は分かったから。
青崎はいいのか？
She had no idea what his question meant, but she at least understood that he was trying to be considerate, which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd just be just as dense about people's feelings as he was about everything else.
別に、私もこのまま帰るから。
First, though, she thought it'd be best that they both stop by the faculty room. Mr. Yamashiro had mentioned that the transfer procedures had already been completed, so all that remained was for him to sign off on her duties.
先生、案内終わりました。
それはお疲れ様。しずきくんもお疲れ様。それで校舎を回った感想はどうかな？
Is this in her imagination at the moment, or is this actually happening?
ありがとうございます。なんというか、とても学校ですね。
It's like a real school. The school is like a real school.
そうかそうか。うん、明日から頑張りなさい。
She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting.
山城先生のことは気にしないでいいわ。教え子に厄介なことを押し付けてふんぞり返っているぐらい職員室が好きなんだから、何時間でも待ってるでしょ。いえ、待ってるべきじゃない？
そうか。
Oh, look at his face
青
now.
崎がいいんならいいんだな。
There it was again. Whatever Sojiro was getting at, Aoko had no idea.
それじゃあ行くよ。今日はありがとう。
今日だけよ、今日だけ。
She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent into a broad smile, as if he found the gesture endearing. It was a softer expression than she had grown accustomed to seeing out of him. It was a kind of smile that would make anyone smile back. Well, most people at least. Aoko didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile.
それじゃあまた。
Bye-bye! And with that friendly farewell, Sojiro walked towards the end of the hallway. Or so she thought before he turned into the next class over. Did he just... Sojiro headed straight for one of the classroom's windows, whereupon he opened it with ease. The chilly November air filled the room as the soft sounds of the rain doubled in volume. In that instant, she realized his intention with opening the window. She really wished she hadn't. He's about to jump out and be like, okay, time to leave.
いや、待て待て待て。
He already had one leg out the window as she dashed to stop him.
何するつもりよ、あんたは。
何ってアルバイトに行くんだけど。
It's the way out, right?
その窓は人が出入りするところじゃないの。
But this is how I got in.
だいたいここ何階だと思ってるの？
She saw the light of understanding dawn in his eyes.
死ぬところだった。2階から降りたら危なすぎる。
Who would have thought to put an exit here? This is dangerous.
危ないのはあんたの頭。
Her insult went right over his head.
あのね、こっちじゃ窓から人は出入りしないの。さっき言っとくべきだった。
知ってるよ。時間がないんで慌ててたんだ。ありがとう。これからは気をつける。
His face is so like goofy, but I love it. He pulled his leg back inside and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain.
いいけど、私は別に。あなたがどこから外に出ようが関係ないもの。ただ、できれば私の前ではやらないでほしいだけよ。それより、あなた、本当に明日から学校に来るの？
I love their facial expressions, especially Aoko. It's hilarious.
来るよ。不安だけど案内してもらったし。
He bid her farewell before running away down the hallway. She hoped he would walk down the stairs and leave through the school's entrance like a normal person.
はあ、大丈夫なのか？あんなんで。
The image of him disappearing into the distance popped into her head in spite of her ire. She had no intentions of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if the feeling was fueled by concern or irritation. Why she had even gotten angry with this insignificant transfer student in the first place. A strange day with a strange transfer student, resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as she reflected on what should have been a more enjoyable day than the irritating experience she just had.
いっか。どうせこれっきりなんだし。
The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The gray sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamashiro and Aoko were likely the only ones left at school. The unlit classroom looked over gloomy and ominous as Aoko stood in it alone. She pulled up her left sleeve. Her dainty, unremarkable watch showed that it was almost 1 o'clock.
時間合ってる。
She looked out the window at the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella, a sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason, affected her far more than she had wished. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there for today. It's been kind of long, and that was a pretty interesting meeting between, I guess our two main characters. I'm assuming they're main characters. But yeah, this game has been, it's very curious. I like it so far, even though we haven't really gotten into the meat of things. But Sojiro seems very interesting. He's very, I kind of like the completely wild person that he is, because he was going to jump out the window. And how he's not really accustomed to human norms. And I love how Aoko just seems like she's done with all this shit. Her attitude's pretty funny, but I'm sure it'll get a lot more interesting. We didn't see much magic stuff other than like the very beginning where she was trying to do something with the cat. But yeah, we'll continue with this next time. And until then, I will be seeing you. See ya!